Okay. You ready?
Nope. I'm not. Why don't you say something one more time?
It's gross. It tastes like candy.
Ugh. He's a burper. That guy.
At least I'm not burping.
I was about to say, like, what's that? But then I realized what it was. And I was like, I don't want to talk about that anymore.
Burps are disgusting. It's like a shart.
A shartnado.
That's what they call a rest home.
Yes.
That's a shartnado.
Ask any CNA. I'm guaranteed they will tell you they've seen a shartnado.
It's like it's infectious. If one resident sharts, the rest of them got to do it.
And there you have it. The shartnado.
The shartnado. It's like a fucking storm of shit. I can't believe this is happening. Okay. 10 seconds for Harambe.
Her theme song is Meet Me Tonight in Screamland. And her impact on televiewers has been fantastic. Now, 3 short weeks after Vampira's first scary airing, Newsweek magazine told the nation about her Saturday night pret-together. After 6 weeks, Life magazine devoted 3 big pages of pictures and story to Vampira. And worldwide publicity in French, English, and Australian newspapers and magazines is now being topped by a full-page spread in the Sunday edition of the New York Daily News. And all because of this sweet, lovable little key named Vampira.
What I need is a Vampira cocktail to settle my nerves. It'll not only settle them, it will petrify them. A Vampira cocktail. You like it? It hates you. I've had several letters asking whether olives or cherries should be used in making my cocktail. Well, actually, neither is necessary, since they'd only disintegrate upon being put into the cocktail. However, if you want to use some garnish, you can drop in an eyeball, if you happen to have an extra one around the house. Our little fairy tale tonight is called The 13th Guest. The 13 makes it timely, topical, and terrifying. It's about a humorous fellow who dies telling a joke. Something of a deadpan comedian. Here. Let me darken the room, and we shall commence.
Good journey, Harambe.
Good journey. All right. Welcome back, everybody, to the Drop Culture Podcast. We're the little podcast that picks up that little piece of the culture that you forgot about or missed.
Shines it up real nice and crams it in your ear holes.
There you go. That's us. I'm Brock.
And I'm Dan.
And we are a miss with our other co-host.
We are a Mitch.
Yes, we are. We are a Mitch without Mitch here. So, all right, Mitch, if you're listening to this,
love you,
love you, love you, buddy.
We love you, buddy.
See you at work.
I will not see you at work.
So, with our whole format here is drop culture. So we do try to pick those little bitty things that people, and they were big at the time. There's
Absolutely.
a lot of things that were big at the time, mainly movies, anything that kind of has to do with stuff. And we're kind of expanding, like we were talking about on our 100th episode. We're really kind of growing and showing more things that really did influence the world.
Absolutely.
And this topic that we're talking about is these late night horror and schlock hosts on TV.
Absolutely.
It was one of those things that we had when we were really young, and it was kind of dying out. But there was a resurgence in the mid to late 80s, all the way up into the 90s, mainly because of one person Actually 2, maybe 4 at that time.
Maybe there were 27 people that were behind the scenes.
Yes.
I don't know.
But this thing had been going on since the mid-50s.
Absolutely.
Which is crazy. And they started with horror movies, and we grew up with USA Up All Night. And that was a Friday, Saturday thing. And of course we had Kung Fu Theater in the afternoon on Saturdays on USA.
Dude, I realized over the last few episodes how much USA Network I watched as a child.
No shit, right? I mean, it was huge because
Wasn't wrestling on USA too?
Yes. That's what I was about to say. I mean, USA had wrestling. Their format was tremendous. It was badass. And they would always have really cool cartoons too. Like was it them that played the Wacky Races?
Yeah, I think so.
And was it them that did the Aardvark and the Anteater?
I don't know the answer to that one.
And the Pink Panther. They were on another show or another TV station. It might have been TBS. But yeah, TBS was another one of those in the early 90s, kind of at the, I guess the more silver age of cable television, because it was in the golden age for it. They were really, well, I guess you could consider that the golden age, from the late 70s.
I think that probably depends on what people, that's all subjective.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Yeah.
But I would say TBS was, it didn't have the host necessarily like what we're about to talk about.
Yeah.
But TBS was that great middle afternoon movies. They would just show the most random shit.
And they would have good stuff on there. I mean,
100%.
they did the Incredible Hulk stuff, everything like that. TBS is one of those, if you were at home sick from school, you'd end up watching TBS,
That's right. And everything was 5 minutes later than everything else.
Yeah.
So you could look through all the channels and see what was on.
Yes.
And then if nothing else good was on, you'd go back to TBS.
I totally fucking forgot about that.
That's true.
That's the truth. Damn.
It's on at 11:05, son.
Damn. And that's when they still would shut off the TV at midnight too.
Yeah.
I remember those days.
For sure.
Leaving the TV on.
There'd
and
be
you
like
wake
an
up.
eagle and a flag,
Yeah.
and they'd be playing some music.
I was watching Gremlins 2 the other day.
Oh, yeah.
And remember when he plays, he's thank you for watching the Clamp Cable Network. We hope you enjoyed your life. Because it was like, the end of the world has happened, and now you're not watching TV, which is so fucking awesome. I love that movie anyway. But I love the Gremlins. But this little deal, this was something that was an event. In your specific region, it was like wrestling.
It was.
Yeah.
Especially it was more like wrestling in the 60s.
Yes.
Where everything was an independent
Territories,
label. Yeah, territory.
regions.
Yeah, exactly.
Very
regional.
Yes,
regional.
you could do your own things with it. There are so many different personalities in this, and they were all not competing with each other. They were only having fun in their time slots.
Right.
Which is late night, which a lot of these guys were, anchors on the station, or they were the weatherman, or they were the fucking production assistant or somebody.
Right.
And they'd be like, hey, you're on the horror show tonight. Okay, cool. So they had to invent things. I mean, and even in Gremlins too, that's, I guess that's kind of where this idea was popping in my head, because I'm a huge fan of, a lot of these people. But, even in Gremlins 2, they had that little late night theater deal that they were doing.
I actually thought you got this idea because we were talking about Return of the Killer Tomatoes the other day, and that's how it starts out with the game show, or with the late night show, or dollar movie or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And that is a movie that I saw on USA Up All Night.
Of course, me too. That was the first time I saw that one. USA Up All Night for us was, I know for me,
and that was more of a national thing.
Yeah, that was huge. You would watch Up All Night, and they would be these schlocky, fucking stupid movies.
We say that, and I don't know if we're going to get in movie lists now, things like that, but I was surprised at some of the movies that I saw on USA Up All Night. Like Alien was on there.
Really?
Yeah, they have some legit movies that were mixed in there, but what I remember the most are the schlocky movies.
Yeah, like Burger College and fucking weird shit like that. They didn't play like Police Academy.
They did play like Airplane 2. I remember that.
Oh. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
Cause I remember all the shitty horror movies and like fucking hobgoblins and And, you know, and at that time too, right as soon as they were about to end, you got Mystery Science Theater 3000.
Yeah.
They were doing their regional deal too. So they were kind of like the last bastion of that regional kind of a deal. Because they did it as kind of like a cable access joke thing, you know. But it got so much response that it just blew up. And then they ended up on E-television, and then they had the movie. Now they're on Netflix. There's just so many different fucking things that they've done. But now let's kind of
let's take it back a little bit.
I'm gonna give you the definition of a horror host, right?
Okay.
Per Wikipedia, you know. So
This is a horror host.
yes,
Okay.
A horror host is a person who acts as the host or presenter of a program where horror films and low-budget B-movies are shown on television or the internet. They threw the internet because it's still going on today.
Sure.
Usually the host assumes a horror-themed persona, often a campy or a humorous one, of course. There are breaks in the film, which is, you know, because of course there was commercial breaks, so they had to come back a lot,
Right.
you know, back in the day. And they would comment on the movie, right? But then they would also have stupid jokes and weird shit
Little
on them, right?
skits and whatnot.
Well, they would also have the skits involving the host and sometimes with a sidekick, like a puppet or a fucking rubber chicken like Sven
Or a
Guri.
guest.
Yeah. Well, generally, everybody kind of points to whenever Screen Gems, the company released a whole bundle of Universal horror films, right? And they released it to syndicated television. So in the 50s, syndication was coming into play. So there was these movies that, you know, the original Universal monster movies, that people loved them. You know, they saw them as a kid. TV's there, so they're showing them on television for it. They called it shock, right? So it was, you know, The Wolfman, Frankenstein, great classic horror movies that would be on late at night, you know? But what's the weird part about it is it actually started before that. It started in probably 1954, I think, and it was started by my favorite one out of all of these people. Everything was Vampira.
Right.
I'm a huge Vampira fan.
She was the original.
She went to a party in Hollywood because she had moved to Hollywood. She was a Finnish American actress. So she took photos with like one of the most famous Dadaist artists back in the day, Man Ray, and took a lot of photos with him.
Right.
She was generally perceived as being a pretty good actress. Mae West fired her from some production of some play on Broadway or something like that because she thought she was upstaging her because she was so good.
Wow.
Vampira is like literally she was one of the few actresses that was doing really, really good stuff. She was shapely. She had the looks. She had everything. She was just very, very good.
Yeah, she had been in a couple pretty decent films.
Yeah. And you know, a beautiful woman, just without the Vampira makeup and everything like that. She was she could have been a Hollywood starlet, but she didn't get a lot of breaks. So she went to this party, costume party, and she was dressed as the Addams Family character that we all know of as Morticia Addams. Kind of more in that campy style because that's how the Addams Family started.
Right.
Was in the comic strips. So she kind of basically turned it into something her own. You know, she had that micro waist, you know, kind of more of a cartoonish character. And she was noticed by somebody at one of the TV stations, right?
Right.
So he said, "Hey, we want to go ahead and put you on television and you can host these movies." Well, she invented the look and the style, the campiness, the jokes, everything that have to do with late night horror hosts. I mean, she was cutting edge. She decided that she wanted to do this stuff and just did it. Like when she would open up, it was just like dry ice, creating the fog, and she would walk down the hallway, you know, very, very long. She would take her time, and then she would get there and scream and say that screaming makes her relax. But then she had she had the old Victorian couch with skulls on it. And she was always drinking something that was bubbling over. You know, she had that face was her eyebrows look better than, you know, any eyebrows out there right now. I mean, she was just such a I don't know, an innovator at that point.
Absolutely.
And that's crazy. She was friends with, big friends with, what's his name? Rebel Without a Cause dude.
Oh yeah, James Dean.
James Dean.
There was like some stuff in the papers after his death, like kind of tying her into some kind of
love triangle almost.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also supposedly he's on one of her episodes.
Oh really?
Yeah, he was like he gets his knuckles wrapped because she was like a teacher or something in it. Very few minutes of footage have survived. Because a lot of it was lost or it deteriorated or fires or anything like that. So whatever you find online for Vampira is pretty much what you're going to get. You know, she actually ran for nighttime mayor too, which is weird.
I saw that.
Yeah. You know, I mean,
The night mayor.
the night mayor of LA, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, they did all kinds of publicity stunts, everything like that. Whereas she would ride around and she would, kind of, I don't know, just have the black parasol, you know, and sit in the back of that car, go eat burgers and shit. And everybody's like, ooh, she's so weird, you know? But, you know, what she did is she opened the door for somebody to do something like this. Nobody had ever seen anything like that. So, because America has always been fascinated with horror in a way.
Absolutely.
You know, there's a big portion of the American public that really does embrace horror movies, schlock movies, things like that, you know, mutant movies. And in the 50s, those movies are still coming out.
Right.
You know, I mean, you still had brand new movies like The Creature from the Black Lagoon 2 and stuff, you know. People were redoing their Frankenstein movies, and it was kind of all over the place. But for her to go on there and introduce these movies and create this whole character, which, you know,
She retained the rights to that too.
Yeah. We'll talk a lot about how.
Am I right on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
She owned all of that stuff. But I mean, she didn't get in trouble for copying Morticia Addams, you know, at the point where.
It wasn't even Morticia Addams yet. It was just part of that cartoon.
The Addams family.
By,
Yeah.
Charles Addams or something like that.
Yeah. Something like that. Yeah. So it was kind of like, she invented the character, but took a lot of the look from it and was still something different. Yep. You know, she's still very iconic. There's a lot of, one of these days, if I ever go back to LA, I'll definitely will go visit her grave. That would probably be one of the coolest ones to go to. You know what I mean? She eventually like ended up like putting tile in linoleum flooring. She she totally fell off.
I read that. And then like, didn't she open a shop after that?
Yeah. On Hollywood Boulevard or in Beverly Hills or
what was it? Vampira's Attic or something like that?
Yeah, she was still revered. And if you listen to the Misfits, you know that they had their own song, Vampira, which was not necessarily my introduction to her because she had always been there and her image was always there because in the 80s we had Elvira, which we'll talk about her a little bit more later on. But, you know, she really did bring something fresh and new to television, you know, with so many different things happening at that point and TV becoming more of a thing, way more of a thing than it was before, you know, 10, 15 years before that too. I mean, she really was changing things, which is really cool. So that Schlock came out in the late 50s. It was released in 1957. So you have all these television stations that are buying the rights or buying the packages, which were like a shitload of movies. We're talking, oh my God, I don't think it was like 100 movies or it was a lot of fucking movies. And it was stuff like The Mummy, The Invisible Man, of course, The Wolfman, spy films, mystery films, all kinds of stuff. It's like you could look back and see Dracula's Daughter, which you don't really see that a lot of. All the Invisible Man movies, all the Mummy movies, The Raven, you know, all that stuff that's like really fucking cool, right? And then right after
Price the Raven?
Yeah. And then after that, they did Son of Shock, which they added to it. So there was just a lot of titles that they had to work with, and they could show them every week, right?
Right.
So again, like we were saying, they had these people that were on the station that would get done with the nightly news and then run across the station to go work as their character, put on some shitty makeup, make them look like Dracula. It was very easy,
Right.
To put on those easy deals, and then they would embark on their deal. But it was such a big thing, people loved being at home to watch those.
Right.
And people were loyal all the way up until some of the last ones, in the late 70s, early 80s were still on the air, and they had to finally cut them out.
Right.
One of the very first major guys in that too was Zachary. Zachary, I noticed that he was pretty prolific at the time. I think they've had like 3 or 4 different versions of Zachary too.
Mm-hmm.
But the main guy was John Zachary, right? He was kind of, he was a television host, radio personality, singer, voice actor. But he was really on from the 50s and from the 50s to the 60s. He did all kinds of voiceovers. He recorded a top 10 novelty rock and roll song, Dinner with Drac, and 2 collections of horror stories, Zachary's Vulture Stew and Zachary's Midnight Snacks. He looked weird, but he invented his own kind of makeup style too.
Right.
These people fell into this stuff. They fell into this stuff in a way that they could create their own everything. Most of them would rise out of a crypt or, come out of something really weird or have these, sets that look like Frankenstein.
Exactly.
Where they were creating.
Like the lab.
Yeah. They were having just these weird shit, Now, Zachary spawned a whole bunch of the guys to really kind of go into their, I don't know, their own for it. So you had in the 50s your most notable hosts, and these are some of the guys that are like the ones that you'll see, in all kinds of articles and things like that, like Gorgon, Marvin, Morgus the Magnificent, Selwyn, Tarantula Ghoul, and of course Vampira and Zachary. They were the 2 starters of everything.
Yeah, they're the standouts for sure.
Yeah, the 60s, still having this shock run, still had a lot of people that were still going on it. One of the most famous people out of the 60s that went all the way up into the 80s, this guy was on, and he's got kind of a really cool lineage too in the horror genre itself.
Okay.
So Chili Billy Cardill. Okay. He was on Night of the Living Dead. Because he was the late night horror host for Chiller Theater it was a Saturday night deal that showed horror movies and science fiction movies in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
Everybody knew Chili Billy. He was on Night of the Living Dead. He was at the very end of Night of the Living Dead when the guy's like, well, they're all dead. And he was the guy that was going to interview people. So, which was really cool. And so everybody knew him, and they were like, oh my God, fucking Chili Billy's on this shit? That's pretty cool. And it was kind of one of those, like, Romero loved him. All of the major directors that watched those movies in the theaters, when they were little kids, got to see them on TV, and that kept that horror genre kind of going, the shock stuff going. And guys like Chili Billy were the ones that everybody knew. The guy probably couldn't go anywhere without people being like, Chili Billy, I watch your show every night. You know what I mean? He really did do a lot of really cool stuff. Eventually, his daughter was the lead actress in Day of the Dead, Laurie Cardill.
Oh.
So that's the lineage that you have.
Making the connection.
Yeah. That's the lineage that you have and that's a huge deal for like the Night of the Living Dead franchise, right? They kept with that stuff. They kind of had that tongue in cheek kind of a, here you go. Here's some stuff that you might know,
right?
That you might not know, and then the regional people would know it. But then Laurie Cardill actually was a great actress. She was a main character in Day of the Dead, and he was still alive at the time whenever that movie came out. His show had just ended,
right?
In like 83, 84, something like that. And whenever they changed their format, they kind of got rid of it because he held on for a long time because people loved him in that region. Just like a lot of the horror hosts in the 70s and 80s, they went up to the 70s and 80s and they were like, no.
Yeah.
They kind of went down there.
And when most of them didn't move beyond their regional,
no, didn't have to.
Yeah, their regional territory, I guess.
Yeah.
Regional walls.
They have like a lot of really cool names in these, like Sir Graves Ghastly, you know, Vegas Vampire. I wonder what he was all about. You know what I mean? Coffin Joe, Goulardi. Goulardi was another one that actually ended up, he stayed around for a long time. He started in the 60s too. Mona Lisa. Morgus the Magnificent. Gorgon was still going, but I think Gorgon went for a long time too. But people like the Misfits, you know, Glenn Danzig and all those guys were keeping those influences in their stuff. They put that kind of a feel, the horror shock atmosphere into their music, you know, because they loved it. Because, you know, what are you going to do when you're kind of an outcast? And even if you're not an outcast, almost really, you're going to be watching these late night TV shows. In Halloween, they had, in Halloween the movie, they were showing The Thing from Another Planet, you know, in the background, which was really fucking cool, which was a weird callback because eventually that ended up being his next film, or one of his next films, John Carpenter's, was The Thing, after they were showing it on the Halloween, you know, in the background. Right. But that stuff was always around for us whenever we were watching those movies. Is they did have, and they still, you know, show a lot of that stuff. You know, and if they're doing period pieces, the Shock Theater was something, or the Chiller Theater or something like that is something they have going in the background on the TV, which is cool.
Well, and there's definitely some 80s horror movies that like have that premise.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. So I mean, they're throwing that in there because that was a huge influence for people.
Absolutely.
A lot of that generation, again, seeing the movies in the theaters, moving into the television, and then putting it in their work. You know, and in New York, you know, I don't really remember who was really big in New York, but they all had their own awesome people doing it. I think it's your phone. But yeah, he went till shit. Chili Billy was on there forever. 1983, 64 to 83. The only thing that stopped that. Now this is huge. Was Saturday Night Live.
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy if you think about it. Saturday Night Live, before Saturday Night Live, and I was thinking about this, you had this.
Yeah.
And that's what you would do on Saturday nights. You would watch that. And then they had this comedy show, Saturday Night Live, which it was a calculated move. It had to have been. You know, they're like, let's put this on late at night. There's a lot of people watching TV anyway.
Sure.
We'll get that audience, you know. And so maybe Lorne Michaels was like, hey, I mean, that's a pretty good idea. Instead of doing that, let's do comedy, you know, because late night TV is always a thing. Which I think I would kind of hope that he would have thought about that.
I'm sure.
Yeah.
I'm sure he's pretty good at making money.
Yeah, making decisions like that, yeah. Which is pretty cool. But that was the only thing. He kept that off his regional station for the longest time.
Oh, really?
Up until 83, until they just couldn't do it anymore. You know, because in Pittsburgh, they weren't watching it, you know, because they were watching Chiller Theater. Right. Which is really cool. So, yeah. And I mean, you had SCTV, you had all those other late night comedy. Late night comedy kind of took over at that point. But there were still people doing it in different spots, you know, like we were talking, that would be awesome if we did a late night horror show, like a Joe Bob Briggs or something like that.
We should do it.
Yeah. That'd be awesome. But yeah, in the 70s, I mean, there were still even big people that were starting to. Svengoolie started in the 70s, and Svengoolie is still going today. Right. I record his episodes every once in a while. He looks weird because he's got a top hat. He's like Dr. Demento / fucking something else. And he always got the rubber chicken, and they throw rubber chickens at him and shit, which is pretty cool because as soon as I saw Svengoolie on, it's on one of our public accesses or something. I'm like, record. Nice. So I have it set to record, and if it's a cool movie, I'll watch the introduction. And then, because I've already seen the movie. Right. Yeah. And then just kind of go back. But I, you know, at this point, the horror stuff was dying down after the 70s. 70s had the biggest surgence of different hosts. Of course, I mean, you had Baron von Crypt. That's pretty fucking cool. The Cool Ghoul.
Yeah, I wasn't very familiar with a lot of these folks.
No. Yeah.
I would say, like, you know, obviously Svengoolie, Vincent Price. I remember that. Was a thing. And that's really off this list. Those are the people I know. Yeah. Of course, that's a little before our time.
Yeah. The 80s saw you're really, it was kind of like a return, but it was like a change. So Al Grandpa Lewis,
Yeah.
he actually did his own show, but he couldn't go as, Grandpa Munster.
Right.
Cause they own the rights to it, whoever owned the rights to it. So he went as Grandpa.
Yeah.
So he kind of looked, same everything.
Same everything.
Yeah. You had, Freddy Krueger did some late night stuff.
Do you remember Commander USA's groovy movies?
Yes. It was afternoon on Saturdays, wasn't it?
And it would show 2 movies on Saturday and 1 on Sunday.
Yeah.
That was like before the move to Up All Night and all that.
Yeah.
And then you got a different kind of rollout.
Yeah, because they were doing Kung Fu theater at the time too,
Right.
which was kind of introducing more of that. Because in the 70s, Kung Fu was everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
You know, that destroyed everything.
And in the 80s, it was ninjas.
Yeah, yeah. 70s it was Kung Fu. 80s it was ninjas because they were silent but deadly.
That's right.
But then in the 80s, Mystery Science started too.
Yeah.
And
I actually didn't know that started in the 80s.
started a long time ago, and it was very small. They only did a couple of episodes at first, and then it just blew up. Then you had one of my favorite ones that's still doing it today on Shudder, Joe Bob Briggs.
Right.
He does the drive-in movies. He considers a lot of them drive-ins.
Which is cool.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure that's where you would have saw a lot of these B to Z list movies.
Yes. Yeah. His comedy show kind of had to do with it. He was a writer.
Right.
He wrote under the Joe Bob thing. He was a writer in Texas Monthly and the Dallas Times. So, he reviewed all these exploitation films, which his stuff is funny, I mean, yeah. And I don't know, there's a correlation with Joe Bob Briggs and Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 to me.
Oh.
To me.
Sure.
I just see him in my head. Maybe it's the first time I saw
Just
both
Texas
of those
together.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Dallas,
makes sense.
something like that. He was born in Dallas.
That was his region, right? It was
Yeah.
like kind of the Texas region. I'm sure that you saw him before, like I would have.
Yeah.
Because he later on went on to Showtime, right?
It was Showtime,
Yeah.
and that was fucking awesome to see.
That's where I would have first ever heard of him.
Yeah, I think that's when I first heard of him. And of course, he started movies like The Stand, and he's just always been in a lot of stuff. And now he's doing it on.
I like you said, starred in movies.
Yeah.
Come on,
Yeah, I know, right? His comedy specials are pretty funny too.
Yeah.
I mean, he's the quintessential good old boy.
Right.
The persona is, and even his name in The Stand was Joe Bob.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So who started first, him or Elvira?
They both started around the same time.
Okay.
But I think Joe Bob might have really. I think Elvira was first, though.
Well, she got sued by Vampira Girl for her look. I remember that.
She got sued for it, which that is a very, very weird thing because she didn't get sued by the Addams guy for looking like Morticia, but yeah, she retained the rights for Vampira, and the only reason why she said that it wasn't stealing is because
because it
was a black dress thing.
And the comic book character or the cartoon character that she based it off of was mute. There was no, other than a black dress. That was pretty much it.
Yeah. Yeah. See, yeah. No, that's just a weird thing. Why would she do that? Because again, she was literally Vampira was living in nothing. She did Plan 9. She
did from her, and you were kind of alluding to it earlier when she had her shop or whatever. She would make stuff for celebrities like Grace Slick.
Yes.
Different folks. The Zappa family.
Yeah.
Was a big one, I think.
She they were going to start her show again, but she was going to be an executive producer on it.
Right. And then they didn't hire the girl that she wanted, so she was like, I'm fucking out.
Yeah, it was an African-American woman that she wanted to hire.
Right.
But they went around and they hired Elvira.
Yeah. Something Peterson, right? I don't remember her first name.
Cassandra Peterson.
Yeah, thank you.
Cassandra Peterson. Let me see. They asked her, Vampira to do the Vampira show again. And they didn't hire Lola Falana. That's who they were going to hire. Yeah. So, and I think it was like 82, 83. So Elvira was first. But Joe Bob, like, he was on the movie channel first, you know, and then bled into Showtime and everything else. But he was everywhere, because you always remember, who's the dude that did all the Turner Classic Movies. It was on the movie channel too. He was a host. I would almost put him in this too. He would do the introductions to the movies. Very, very Robert Osborne.
Oh, okay.
So he's kind of like the tame version of all these guys, you know?
Right.
I remember these guys. I remember seeing their introductions to these movies, and then Robert Osborne I grew up with until, you know, he was on Turner Classic Movies where he'd introduce all the old ones, and now it's Mankiewicz, you know? He's kind of carrying that torch with that, which is really cool. The little facts about things. And
sure.
If your dad or your mom recorded movies late on TV at night through cable with the VHS, you would always get the introductions from Robert Osborne, you know, on the movie channel and shit like that. Yeah, his movies, like Joe Bob's movies, he was really funny in a way that he would call, you know, he would give like booby ratings, you know what I mean? Like how many times people were aardvarking.
Right.
He was just funny, and he was always sitting in like a fucking, you know, a lawn chair, and he would just have these sarcastic bullshit comments. And you would really just love watching what he did, which was pretty fucking cool. You know, Elvira came before that, but yeah, Elvira was like hugely prolific in a way. Now,
she had large tracts of land.
Yes, she did. She had a big snack shelf. And she was born in Colorado Springs.
No, I don't think that's right.
Was she not?
No, I think she was born in... No, you could be right.
I think she's from here. Yeah.
I think she lives in Manitou Springs now.
No, she was born in Manhattan, Kansas.
That's right. I knew it was. I was like, it's like New York, Kansas, or something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
Manhattan,
but she lived in Colorado Springs, and now she's here, right, in Manitou Springs.
That's according to our museum. That is fact. I've never met her.
Which
in
would
our
be
town of
fucking
6,000
cool,
people.
yeah. Which is cool. You got to know what she looks like outside of the makeup.
Exactly.
But she did her, you know, Knott's Berry Farmdale up until like 2 years ago. I mean, she was born in 1951, and she still looks freaking great. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
If you go anywhere in Denver, like in a vintage shop or something like that, everybody's got a fucking Elvira standee. No shit. I've seen more Elvira standees with Coors Light or something like that than I've seen anywhere.
Yeah, from the area.
It's Coors and it's fucking Elvira, and it's.
I know my father-in-law's met her.
Yeah, see, I mean, supposedly she's just like a really cool person. She started off as a model. They went to her and her parents, and she was still like a sophomore in high school. Went somewhere, and somebody spotted her, you know, and was like, "Hey, sign this contract." And then she did, which she ended up. And this is another kind of crazy fact with these horror hosts. She like dated Elvis for a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Which is fucking weird. You know what I mean? So you have Vampira, James Dean.
Right.
Elvira, the fucking king of rock and roll. You know what I mean? She was a dancer, at one of the shows at like the Dunes or something like that.
Right.
And then she also, she was a topless dancer in, Working Girls. Well, never even heard it. And then the Tom Waits cover for Small Change, she's topless on it, but she doesn't remember it. She's like, I don't know. She's like, I don't fucking remember that shit. But like, you know, I mean, Elvis.
That was the 80s. Huh?
Yeah. Or 70s. Yeah. Elvis kind of pushed
80s.
her to do some more stuff, to get more into it. So, which was really cool. I thought that was a really cool idea.
Absolutely.
And shit, she's probably, I would have to say, the biggest horror host out of all of them.
I think she's probably the most well-known right now, you know, in the zeitgeist, because she did commercials. She did lots of things outside of just what she was doing as the horror host, so I think she's the most recognizable.
Yeah, she had her own movie.
Yeah.
Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, which is so fucking cheesy.
I remember.
It's so bad. Her car is awesome, though. That car was the shit. She's still like, the last thing I saw her on was comic book men. She
Yeah.
actually came and they did a blood drive, and she was there signing autographs.
Nice.
Yeah, and I mean, for almost like 70 years old, she looks exactly the same.
Right.
Which is weird. She really does look the same. You cannot tell that she's really aged a whole bunch.
That good Manitou living, son.
I guess, it's the sun or something like that. It's fucking awesome. So, when, she was doing her thing, and then she got into the movies and the advertising. She was involved in like Super Bowl commercials, all kinds of shit, right? Elvira was everywhere. She even had her own book. She still does. Both her and Vampira both are kind of like a model for the goth girl in a way.
100%, dude.
Yeah.
I would say all the way from them, including Morticia, even in her later iteration. You know what I mean? Like in the TV show. Those three specifically.
And Lily Munster.
No, Lily's her own monster.
Yeah, you don't think so? Yeah.
No, I actually watched a whole video about
okay.
whatever, yeah. She's different. She's a lot different.
Well, they all put them kind of together. Right. Whenever you're looking at those skinny, small-waisted women, you kind of see those in the pictures all together.
Well, you think Lily Munster always wore white?
Did she?
Yeah. She had dark hair, but she had the white stripes through it.
She was like, yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just the personality type was completely different.
Yeah.
Than those other.
She was very
Vampira
campy.
And all those other ones were much darker, really.
Yeah. And come to think of it, though, I remember watching The Munsters whenever I was really young.
On TBS?
Yeah, well, even before
that's
that.
where I watched.
Yeah, I think the first time I watched The Munsters, we took a trip to Dallas to go visit my aunt.
Okay.
And I had to have been like 3 or 4, but I can distinctly remember this shit. Watching The Munsters in black and white on her TV, and was like, I love this. This is fucking awesome. That was like, I guess that's probably where my love affair would start from him.
Gotcha.
At my Aunt Dolla's house in the fucking early 80s, just really getting into that macabre and that black and white. And maybe that just stuck with me. And it was at the right place at the right time, you know? So, of course, growing up in the 80s, we still had Elvira. She was everywhere.
Right.
And then in the late 80s, after, the Captain, movie command dude or whatnot from USA, Captain Commando, we had, this is us right
Commander
here.
USA's Groovy Movies? Is that what you were talking about?
Yeah, Commander USA. We had USA Up All Night.
Yeah.
USA Up All Night is a fucking massive influence on my life.
Absolutely.
I can never, I don't know, I can never overstate how important USA Up All Night was to me. The Commanders movies, because I didn't watch Night of the Living Dead on USA Up All Night.
Okay.
But it was on an iteration before USA Up All Night came out as an official deal. So there was another nighttime show, and I looked it up a long time ago, and I totally forgot what it was. But that movie changed my life. Watching it that night, because I had watched Mad Max that day. Because we were at my parents' friend's house, and they put me in a back room like they always do, and like, here, fucking watch this movie, and then don't come out unless you need to go to the bathroom or you want to eat something.
Right.
While they would party and play, drinking games.
Yeah, we had the downstairs at my dad's cousin's house. Yeah, I remember.
yeah. And so I watched Mad Max, and then it was late, and they were letting me stay up. Right, I'm sitting on their friend's bed watching this fucking console TV. Guess what's on? Night of the fucking Living Dead.
Nice.
Never seen it before. Black and white. They had these cutaways on these in between, the commercials. They had these cows that were singing. But they played that movie every midnight for I don't know how long. Every Saturday at midnight or Friday night at midnight. I forgot which day it was, but it was all the time, right?
Right.
So I would be able to catch that the next week and watch the whole thing. But it always seemed weird to me that it seemed like I would catch it halfway. I don't know why. It was just weird. So I never really saw it fully for a long time until I finally saw it. But then that kind of, again, continues my love affair with these weird late night movies. But that got me into Up All Night. And the very first person I remember from Up All Night was Gilbert Godfrey, of course.
Even though he was a little bit later.
Mm-hmm, exactly. Rhonda Shear... She was the first one.
Before her, wasn't it? Colleen?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
she was on there for 2 years. I don't remember her last name, but it was she was your gal pal. She always said that. It's your gal pal, Colleen, whatever her last name was. I think I would have done some homework, but I don't remember her name.
Well, they showed a lot of fucking really cool shit back in the day.
Absolutely.
They had.
It was, I'm sorry, it was Caroline Schlitt.
See, I don't really remember her that
I do
much.
remember her.
I remember when I was doing this researching, I looked at it and I was like, huh. But they mainly showed like, low rate titty flicks, like just like really shitty movies.
They played, I was really surprised. Like I remember from Up All Night, because you got 2 days worth of it, Yeah. You would have a Friday night. I think that was on. So I don't know did you get 2 movies on both of them? I think.
Yeah.
Friday night you had Rhonda Shear at that time, I think, and then Gilbert Godfrey on Saturday.
Yeah. The secondary movie didn't really have a lot of cut-ins.
Right.
But the first movie had all the cut-ins because that's when everybody was watching.
Right. And there were some big guests. I was surprised. I went through. I remember because Rhonda Shear used to have this deal where she would like go over to her bed, and there'd be like she'd pull the sheets back and it'd be somebody under there.
Yeah.
Like Shawn
Jason.
Michaels from wrestling. Pinhead was there, like not under her sheets, but Amazing Jonathan.
Dang.
That was a really good episode. I remember that one.
Was Super Dave there?
Probably.
That would have been fucking awesome.
I don't remember all of them. I just remember they'd have, they had a guy that was from like Las Vegas there that would taught people how to make bologna sandwiches, how he used to make them for Frank and all those guys.
Nice. I'm looking at the movies that they have listed. You're right. Alien, Airplane, Amazing Stories. Shit, man.
There's a ton. Like the Halloween and Halloween 2 are on there. But what
Rambo's, Raising Arizona.
Exactly.
Shit like that. Dang.
What I really, well, you can figure for how long this was on, and they're doing it every week in 4 movies. I mean, that's a lot of movies.
Yeah, they're licensing a lot through there.
But what I remember the best are the shitty movies, like Chud 2, Bud the Chud.
Fucking love that movie, dude. Oh my God, I love that movie.
Razorback. Oh.
I don't think I've seen that one.
Let me tell you, sir, you think there's not horror movies on Up All Night. Razorback's about a giant, as you can imagine, razorback boar that's just randomly killing people all over.
Dude. See, this is the introduction to this crap cinema that we love so much.
Absolutely.
Because this is the biggest influence, I think, on
I would say this is
stuff.
where I first saw those Puppet Master movies. With
I
the
rented
little
them.
puppets.
Yeah, I rented those first, because they were full moon features.
Yes, yes, they were.
I used to love full moon features, and the first time I watched something like what was it, the Toxic Avenger, I had rented it because it looked like a comic book. It looked like a superhero, and I watched it. Was like, what the fuck?
I remember that.
And they would play them all the time on there too. Toxic Avenger 1, 2. They played a lot, and you would always watch them, and it was like whenever the Simpsons were on, almost in a way, because you would make sure that on like Friday nights you would watch USA Up All Night. You know, if you weren't
100%.
spending the night at a friend's house, at my house, it didn't matter. What the fuck I watched. So it was that I was on that shit.
I think for me, this was not only the really shitty movies of the time, but it played a lot of older movies that like I may not have seen. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Once Bitten.
for sure.
That was a crazy movie at the time too.
Absolutely.
And fucking weird one. You know what I mean?
Right.
And this is
But like Eating Raoul.
Yeah.
Like I probably would not have seen that if it wasn't for USA Up All Night.
I didn't watch it on there. I finally watched it the other day. But
Okay.
Paul Bartel is fucking hilarious, dude. And Mary Warnoff, of course. Of
course.
And Chakotay.
Hamburger, the motion picture.
Yes, that was the one that sticks with me the most. I do not know why. And it was like they were telling them how to make fucking burgers and like dipping ketchup on the shit. And the dude invents like a fucking mustard mayonnaise type shit or something, and it fucking kills, man. And the dude that was like the professor had the really small glasses, and I want to see that movie again.
Sounds like maybe an episode coming up.
Is that Burger the movie?
Hamburger the Motion Picture.
Oh my God! See,
Hot Dog the movie. Hamburger the Motion Picture.
I always call it Burger Academy. That's the one that I love that one. I would watch it, and I could never ever see it on anything else, And I think I only saw it that once, but I fucking remember so much of it, But didn't they play all the what's his name? The guy that did Eek the Cat, shit like that. Didn't they play his movie too? One Crazy Summer, stuff like that.
I don't remember watching that on there. I think I mostly remember watching that on old school HBO.
Yeah. I don't think it was on
Cinemax
there.
or whatever it was. Those were the two channels we always had.
They even played Parker Lewis Can't Lose.
They played Every Which Way You Can and Any Which Way But Lose.
Oh, goddamn. And probably, what was the other, what was the shit? The Gods Must Be Crazy. I wonder if they played that shit. That's a fucking
I don't know,
weird
man.
movie.
I just remember, I would always be excited when this was about to happen, when it was time for this show. And, again, just because, man, you would see the craziest stuff, And then sometimes you'd be like, man, I don't want to watch these two shitty movies. I'm out of here. I got shit to do.
Yeah.
I'm 12. Fuck off.
Yeah. And then, the older you get, the more drugs you do. And it was I'm not going to stay at home. But it was always there. There's a lot of things that I guess we took for granted at that point that was not there now.
Right.
Because right now, Friday and Saturday nights, you got Netflix, you got Hulu, you got whatever you fucking want.
Right. All the time.
And you can never find something to watch. And then you're like, I'm going to watch this. And you're committed. And you're like, well, maybe I'll watch this one instead. This, you didn't have a choice.
Right.
It was like Bobby said the other day, you were committed when you went to the video store.
Yep.
And you were committed on television. You had to watch this stuff because there was nothing else.
Right.
If there's nothing else at midnight or 1 o'clock, what were you watching? Xena, Warrior Princess? Fuck yeah, you were. You were watching that shit because that's all you fucking had out of 4 channels,
Right.
And with this, it was a commitment too, and they showed so many different things, and that's what I think,
But it was a little extra boing.
Yeah.
When you had Rhonda Shear
Yeah.
on there, Elvira, or
yeah,
whatever.
come on, you had the sex and the camp, and
Because
then
you're 10, and you're like, yeah.
yeah.
You're
You're like, all right, I'm gonna watch Alien Nation with.
That's where I learned
Rhonda
about
Shear.
dominatrixes was from Rhonda Shear.
She taught everybody a lot of stuff.
She had a dominatrix on there that was whipping some meat in a grocery store. She's like, well, I don't know what that means. What is that? Rhonda, because she always talked to her about herself in the third person. Rhonda doesn't know what that is.
God
And
damn.
I'm thinking, man, how did they get away with this?
Yeah, no shit, right? I mean,
there wasn't anything gratuitous, obviously.
Yeah, it was cable TV. They were still breaking barriers. And that was, again, way after they started with the horror movies. And they were doing horror. They were doing fucking all the new shit. Which is a huge piece of American television that I think should be applauded and set up above everything else, because these guys were pioneers, really.
Oh, for sure.
I think everybody that we had mentioned and most of those main people that we talked about were the ones that really did influence so many lives, so many different people.
And I like that everybody's got their own take on it. I mean, don't get me wrong, Elvira, Vampira, those are very similar.
Yep.
But I think of Mystery Science Theater 3000, they kind of flipped the script on it.
Yeah.
They're like, we're just going to be here through the whole movie.
Yeah.
Take that.
was fucking awesome.
Oh, absolutely. 100%.
Because those were in syndication on E-television, and I used to watch Howard Stern on there, and then Mystery Science Theater 3000, and then what was the other, Toxie?
Yeah.
Those 3 right there.
With Joel McHale?
Yeah, all of them. It was Joel, and then Skunk Boy, and then who was before that?
I just remember Joel McHale.
There's 3 or 4.
There was a girl for a while, I remember.
Yeah.
Right after Joel McHale, I think.
Yeah. But I remember Mystery Science was kind of like that.
Is that even the right guy that did that?
Joel McHale was on it. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I think he's still on it, though.
I don't know.
Something like that.
Some dude.
Yeah, he was before.
Was souping and talking.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Even, one of the original guy was he's a
Who
big
was the
guy.
original guy?
I forgot.
Maybe
what
that's
his
who
name.
I'm thinking of. It doesn't matter.
Yeah, but no, it was a
This
natural,
isn't the Talk Soup episode.
it was a natural progression up into, Mystery Science, and Mystery Science would just, everybody did that anyway through shitty movies. You did it. And when you were a kid, you're like, man, I could do this for a living. This would be fucking awesome.
Absolutely.
To sit in front of a movie and just, cause their process for Mystery Science is they would pick the movie, almost like a podcast. And then they would watch it and they would figure out good parts for the jokes and they would throw all these jokes out and then they would whittle it down to the script. And they still do it live, riff tracks live, everything like that. The original guy, again, I think it was kind of like a joke to start it. They needed to fill some time and they did that with the puppets and he made his own puppets and everything like that. And then all the original people that are on it, the voices, Tom Servo, everybody.
Crow.
Yeah, Crow. And they basically just had fun with it.
Yeah.
And then it just grew where more people wanted more of it and they loved it. And that's where, I stopped watching late night TV, cause again, I was out partying.
Right.
And then moved on to watching Mystery Science Theater 3000 during the day. Yeah. Even the new episodes are pretty funny too. There's a lot of really, if you could riff on a movie and they call it riffing on movies, it's just funny. So they took everything that they had learned from those late night hosts and added it into there. Because Gilbert Godfrey was fucking funny.
Oh, yeah,
man.
he was great.
Gilbert Godfrey was awesome. He was,
Gilbert Godfrey of Aladdin fame?
Yes.
Yes, okay.
You know him from his voice, but his character, it was just him.
Yeah.
Kind of sitting in an office, at first, and then he kind of moved into other things. And then whenever Fort Fairlane came out, I was like, holy shit, fucking USA Up All Night.
Yep.
Rhonda wasn't in a lot, too terrible amount of movies.
She was kind of a B actress.
Yeah. Just like Joe Bob. But Joe Bob has kind of kept everything alive. And his shtick was the drive-in.
Right.
You would call them all drive-in movies. Gilbert Godfrey would just make fun of the stupid shit. Rhonda had her campiness where she was kind of like, the blonde bimbo,
right.
in that part of it. And there was, Svengoolie was still going on. There's still so many.
Svengoolie was just eternal.
Yeah.
Because they had Svengoolie, son of Svengoolie, and then just Svengoolie for like another 3 decades.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And and again, he's still on and he still looks exactly the same, which, now they've kind of, in this one, film that I watched all about the horror hosts, and this was years ago. They were showing all the people that are doing it online.
No, I'm sure.
Which is kind of a really cool thing. I mean, people have adapted that. So it's younger people doing it.
Right.
But a lot of the older generation, maybe 10 years older than us or so, are still doing it.
Right.
They're going back and they're like, we love this shit. And we live in a nostalgic kind of a society now where people, if they love something, now you have
of course we
unlimited
do, because
resources.
as we've spoken in the past, everything now is a remake of something you loved.
Pretty much. And these guys are trying to reinvent it.
Right.
Which I don't know how they would reinvent it after, Mystery Science. What would you do next?
Well, we'll save that for another conversation that's not on air.
Yes. Because honestly, I think this is something that still should go on and keep going indefinitely. There's so many big fans, and what would be really fucking awesome, and I'm gonna put this out there for Shudder. How Robert Osborne was on there. They need to have horror hosts on that channel.
Absolutely.
To where they introduce the movies before they show them. And they give a little backstory. They talk a little bit about it. And then even at the end, they come back for a final thought.
I want some middle stuff. I want them to cut away in the middle and have some conversation and not commercial. We don't need a commercial necessarily.
Yeah.
But here's 5 minutes of a little skit, conversation, whatever. And then you go back into it.
That would be awesome.
And then you could do a fake commercial in there, maybe.
Yeah, for something like Cheddar Goblin or something.
Some sort of ass cream, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, you have movies like Mandy, and there's probably tons of people that would love to sit and dissect that movie at the beginning and the end and the middle and stuff like that. And I haven't watched a lot of the Joe Bob one on there, so I don't know if he cuts in. I've only watched to kind of see what he looks like and how he's doing it, but he's still Joe Bob Briggs, know? And it's just really one of those cool things, nostalgic wise, to go look at, but he releases 12 at a time.
Right.
He started 2 years ago when Shudder came out and kind of, extended it out, and he does them on the holidays, and he kind of throws, I think he's got some new ones that just came out not too long ago. Like in the last couple of weeks.
Gotcha.
But that would be fucking awesome if Shudder actually did have hosts.
Oh yeah.
Cause
and like a rotating, like here's a week of Sven, or not, here's 5 episodes of Svengoolie.
Yeah. Why
here's
not?
5 episodes of whoever.
Yeah. I wonder how they could do that with
have a 5 episodes that have Gilbert Godfrey and Rhonda Shear together. Remember they used to do those.
Yeah, they did.
They do the crossover ones. Like, didn't happen a ton, but I remember like 4 or 5 times maybe.
Because I remember the intro for that was always weird. The intros were weird. Everybody's intros were like fucking cool. You know, that was like the cool part is you had those intros that would bring you into it. There were just so many good fucking things about these horror hosts and late night TV hosts, and I know we're probably leaving out a whole bunch. And
oh, no, 100% we are, but a lot of those aren't going to be the ones that were way up in the zeitgeist. They're going to be more localized,
right?
You know,
right? And I mean, these are the ones that affected us,
right,
the most. These guys were fucking awesome. I did get me a Vampira t-shirt the other day.
Nice, nice.
The Ghoul Gang. I'm part of that. So like, I mean, I wear my love for horror on my sleeve. If I could really honestly like live that would be a dream, you know?
Yeah. I don't really wear it on my sleeves cause I don't wear sleeves cause sun's out, guns out, son.
I would love to just, I mean, it's just like doing this podcast. This is stuff that I love to do and talk about things like this, pieces of things that made me who I am that are not necessarily in the, I know,
forefront.
Yes. Yeah. And they're kind of those things. It would be weird to kind of like make myself, take a picture of myself and dissect it into little pieces of what makes me me.
Sure.
You know, and this would be a part of it. USA Up All Night, you know, Joe Bob Briggs. There's a little bit of that in me. You know what I mean? There's a little bit of fucking Vampira. There's a little bit of Frankenstein.
What was the movie that starts out with the horror host? Is it 976 Evil?
Probably.
Is that right?
I think so. It's been a long time since I've seen that movie.
I don't remember the one, or was it Fright Night?
I don't fucking remember, dude.
Where it's like the Schlock host at the beginning, and there's a vampire or something there. I think maybe it was Fright Night. I'm gonna have to look into this.
Yeah.
If you guys know, let us know.
Yes. Yeah.
Hit us up on the socials. You know, Facebook,
YouTubes,
Instagram,
Instas.
Get us maybe
all
a
that stuff.
Twitter. Throw us a twat out there.
Yes. Yeah. Don't make it dirty, okay?
You could even check out our website, www.dropculture.com.
Yes, yes. Do you want to wrap it up?
That's what I was doing.
That's good. That's what I thought. Well, I enjoyed
transitioning to outro. Not a friend of the show.
Yes, I really enjoyed this one. I
did too.
I really hope that you guys out there enjoy it too. And thanks for listening.
And let's have more conversation though about it.
Yeah,
I'd love to find out who your B-movie / horror hosts, that shaped you are.
Yeah.
Because it's going to be different for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
Which is kind of interesting.
Yeah. Everybody's going to have their own take on it, but it's going to be a part of everybody.
Absolutely.
I think so. Yeah. Hit us up.
Peace.
Have you ever seen one of these before? Actually, it's something very important to you, something that can help you recognize a fine food store. This man is stamping a Swift's brand on a side of beef, stamping it over and over again so you can see it right on the cut you buy. There it is, the name Swift's, the name that means fine meat and a store that sells the best. Look for the brand Swift's Premium, Swift's Select, or Swift's Arrow when you buy beef. Look for a Swift brand when you buy lamb, too. And also when you're buying veal. then you're sure of tender, juicy, wonderful tasting meat every single time. Never a disappointment when you buy Swift's brands of beef, lamb, and veal. This name tells you you've got fine meat and a fine food store.